You're listening to the AmWritingFantasy podcast. In today's publishing landscape, you can reach fans all over the world. Query letters are a thing of the past. You don't even need a literary agent. There is nothing standing in the way of making a living from writing. Join two best-selling authors who have self-published more than 20 books between them. Now, on to the show with your hosts, Autumn Burt and Jesper Schmidt.
Hello, I am Jesper.
And I'm Autumn.
This is episode 55 of the AmWritingFantasy podcast. And after we kicked off 2020 last Monday with a view on the awesome writing software Scrivener, we are now going to continue setting you up for success with a conversation about, should we call it best practices for 2020 and some goal setting? Something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. We're going to definitely look at some big picture stuff because, hey, it's the new year and now is a time to traditionally set back and set some goals and look ahead and make some changes. So I think that's a perfect way to begin even your writing year in 2020.
Yeah, we should probably have made that episode 54 and then talk about Scrivener today, but there you go.
There you go. I think it works out. Everyone needs to recover, I think, a little bit after New Year's.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe just having this week in between might be a good thing.
Yeah,
people
speaking
can
of
ease into it.
Yes, and now that we're past our week, even though we're technically time traveling, how has your week been going?
It's been good. Actually, this morning I was doing some of the monthly checks on the stats for this podcast. And actually, I was thinking that maybe I could just share a bit about what I learned there.
That'd be exciting, yeah.
Yeah, because since we started the podcast, we've seen consistent increase in the number of downloads per month. So that's, of course, very good. For some weird reason that I still not can work out why September was just way better than all the other months. But even here in the November stats that I just did, so again, we're time traveling a bit here, so we're still in December technically, but in the November stats, we also saw a positive trend in the number of downloads per month. So that's good. And, basically we're releasing these episodes every Monday because we want to be helpful. And of course, we are also trying to make it slightly entertaining rather than a boring rundown of the topics that we pick. So that's why basically that we're checking, or I'm checking the download numbers every month because, unless we see that people are actually finding the podcast useful and are listening, then it would be a waste of our time. Because at the end of the day, all the podcasting is time away from writing. So
that's true.
I think it's good that it's trending in a positive direction, right, Autumn?
Plus, it's like, we do this too because we like to help other authors, and it is nice. It's kind of one way of knowing, unless people go flood us with comments, which would be fine. But I mean, how do we know? We have to gauge that we're actually reaching people and hopefully helping them somehow, and that would be through comments or downloads and things like that. So it's kind of good to see a positive progression that way.
Yeah, but I had a small request that I would actually like to make to our listeners, if you're cool with that.
Yeah, all right. I want to hear what this is.
Yeah, because we have a few reviews on the iTunes store at the moment. There is only 4 of them, so we need to be really careful about jumping to any conclusion based on those reviews. But since the volume of those reviews are rather low, I want to be a bit careful here. But the review average is 3.5. And I would like it to be a minimum of 4. So I think if you agree with me here, Autumn, I would like to ask our listeners if they could please provide a bit of feedback, because we've now been doing this in the newish format, no longer YouTube videos converted into podcasts, but actual podcast episodes. We've been doing that for half a year, something, I think.
Already? Now? I think you're right, though. I think August
something like that.
Started, yeah.
Yeah, and so we've been doing sort of the same format here for 6 months. And of course, when we started out, we, as I've talked about before, I listen to a ton of podcasts myself, so I know at least what I like in podcasts. And that was sort of how we decided to set up this podcast in the, with the different sections that we go through on each episode, what we talk about, and all of that. So there was a thinking behind why we set it up the way we did. But at the same time, of course, we don't know if you, dear listener, like that setup or not. So what I would really love is if I, for example, added a link in the show notes to both Autumn's and my own Twitter profiles, but also a link to the contact form on the AmWritingFantasy website so that you can send us an email, then I would really love it if each of our listeners could just spend 1 minute to just give us a bit of feedback and just tell us what you like about the podcast in its current format, and maybe what you would like to see different, if anything, with the current format.
That'd be great.
Then, yeah, because I really would like to get some feedback from listeners here. And of course, again, we need a bit of volume. So please don't think that, I'll let everybody else send Autumn and Jesper feedback, because then everybody will be thinking that, and then we'll get only a few responses. And to be honest, I'm not willing to make changes on the basis of just a few responses. So we need a bit of volume. So please just spend that 1 minute if you don't mind, and just tell us what you like and what you would like differently as well. Then we will definitely consider, if we see some reoccurring themes popping up in those responses, then we'll definitely consider if we need to do any changes or modifications to the layout of how we run each episode.
That sounds good. Always a good practice to hear from people and see what's going and take a survey.
Yeah. So, but what has been going on in your life, Autumn?
Well, I actually finished a book.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, it's I finished it in December, so hopefully by the time this
reading or writing?
Well, now you're making me depressed, but it's writing.
Sorry.
There's a book I want to read. I hope maybe by the time this airs, I'll have that read. But yeah, so hopefully by the time this is out, I'll have a new book out. It's one that's co-written with my husband about our adventures driving across the United States for the last 4 years, with over 100,000 miles under our tires. And sort of a how to do it, and if you're going to do it, how to be safe kind of book. So, we've been working on it off and on for like a year. And so usually it's my husband who's dragging his feet, and he got his part done so fast. So,
oh no, you didn't count on that, did you?
No, I got to give kudos to him for really pulling it together, and then prodding me, saying, "What are you gonna do your part? What are you gonna edit it? What are you gonna?" So it's done, and I'm so excited to get that out to the world, because I know I have a couple folks we've talked to that I have promised it to for probably the last 8 months. So yay! I've got a book out, my 17th. Woohoo!
It sounds, a very niche book. Is there other books like this on the market already, or is this like the first one on Amazon? Or
believe it or not, it's not the first one. They're overlanding, adventure driving, the kind of nomadic travels is becoming very, very popular, at least in the United States. But I mean, for some countries like Australia and New Zealand, it is walkabouts. It's what you do. However, doing it as a vehicle-based travel. Yeah, it's something that people are getting more into, and there's a certain very big niche on what kind of vehicle you need and the equipment to take and how to stay safe if you're going to some of the remote roads that we've traveled the last few years. That's why Adam got a medical certificate and everything, so he could take care of me, and hopefully if I had to take care of him, he wouldn't be unconscious, because I needed to have him tell me what to do. We need to rethink that one.
Yeah. But, my marketing mindset is already speculating that you could probably get some cheap Amazon ads, keywords for stuff like that. I guess there's not too much competition in that field on the keywords, maybe.
Fingers crossed.
A week on the internet with the AmWritingFantasy podcast.
So in the AmWritingFantasy Facebook group, Dwayne said that he has several stories set in the same world, and he wants to give one of them a noir feel to it. And he was concerned for how to achieve this without it seeming to take place on an alternate universe of Earth. So I just wanted to say that because I love how the group offers each other a lot of help and advice. Lauren's response was very helpful and insightful because she said, quote, I would make a list of some of the things we take for granted about life in our world and change those in your world based on what's been present since the past. And then she said, I think a great example of this is the last Airbender cartoon. In the Earth Kingdom, they have trains, but they are powered by Earthbenders. They developed the technology to build trains, but not the engines to power them. Similarly, in the Fire Nation, they have tanks, but the ammunition is just firebenders shooting fire, unquote.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, but I thought, the idea about, okay, so he had some concerns here, and she says, make a list and of the things that are common and then change it to something else, right?
Yeah,
I think
those are
it's just
great.
Very useful. It's simple, but it's very useful.
Yes, and I see a lot of the comments on the group. Everyone's so helpful. I mean, I can't think of any big problems we've had there. Just, it's a fantastic place to get feedback and ideas. Though it's funny because, one of the things we don't really talk about here very often is that we actually have newsletter that we send out. I think it's like every 3 weeks. It has writing tips and world building tips and stuff too. So besides this podcast, we actually have a newsletter as well. Actually, we've had that going for a while. And we had a good comment that someone emailed back to us just the other day, or at least the other day from when we were recording. And they had a question about, when is it okay to use a word like a name that someone else has used? And they were like, gave an example. I used the word kith for one of my fantasy races. And he wasn't sure if I knew it had been used for a very similar group, oddly enough, in a different role-playing game that I had never heard of. So no, that's not where I got it from. But it was a great discussion on, when is it okay to use a word that someone else has, also used. And to me, it really comes down to none of us are really making up 100%. I bet no matter what word you make up right now in your mind, it is a real world word somewhere in a language in this world. So it's one of those things that, if you Google it and there's not 20 pages on someone else using it for a specific thing, it's, as long as it's not trademarked or copyrighted, it's okay to use because everything's been used before. But I did give them the advice that, if you do Google something and you want to like name something Hogwarts or the Shire, you don't even want to go there, even if they're not trademarked, because you're going to be at page 12,598 on the Google search, and no one's ever going to find your version. But for something like the name of my fantasy race or other strange words that you come up with and you look around and there's not that much else out there like it, that's okay to use, even if someone else has used it somewhere, because unless they're trademarking it or copywriting it, it is legally free to be used.
Yeah, and there's been the whole... I was about to say scandal, but all this stupid stuff, to be honest, in the author community over the last, not recently, but probably like 4 or 5 months back, where, or maybe it was less, but where some authors were trying to trademark certain titles and also words. Like there was somebody who wanted to trademark cozy mystery, so that all that stuff it drove me insane, to be honest. But I agree. Titles and names for races and all that, it's a free for all. You can have the same titles and you can have the same names as somebody else. But I do also support what Autumn said, that when we're talking about fantasy names, which actually we have a bit of information in the book on plotting that we're going to release in 2020 about how to create those names. But one of the advices that we give in there is actually also to try to search a bit on the internet to see if there's some well-known stuff that is already called whatever you want to use as a name, because there's just no reason to, just because you didn't know that it was something that somebody else has already used in a setting or a book or in a game or whatever it may be. there's just no reason to have readers starting to get those associations when they read it, right? So it's just best to avoid if you can. And certainly if you go by the really, really famous examples like the Shire, like Autumn said, then you're probably going to be slammed in the reviews if you do that. So just completely stay clear of stuff like that. But in principle, there is nothing like called stealing in this particular situation, to be honest.
No, not really. I think it's there's going to be some overlap. It's bound to happen. There are so many people writing, and there are so many books. And even if you go back through history of what you might not have read and might not even know is out there, probably there's going to be some duplication. It's just a fact that's going to happen. So just try to keep it to a minimal, and don't do it because you did read something and you thought it was a cool world and you swipe it. Try to make it honestly having come up with it on your own.
And on to today's topic.
All right, so in terms of best practices for 2020, that I think that was what we ended up calling it. But it's basically like a list of some things that are good to do here at the beginning of the year to think about to get yourself set up best for the year to come. And also some goal setting. And maybe that's a good place to start. I don't know, Autumn.
I think so. I think it's a good, goals are a perfect way to start because 2020, I mean, like we said, with New Year's resolutions and everything else, it is a new year. And historically, this is a great time to look ahead and figure out what you want to do and accomplish in this new year. Because otherwise, unless you do that, the year can just run away with you and you'll maybe never, you might never really achieve anything, much less a big project or whatever you want to go. So I know when I do some goal setting, I mean, I try to think about things from everything from like books I want to, how many books I want to write and publish, or courses we want to put out. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we look at and we say it's almost
we're
like,
always too ambitious.
We are, and life does get the better of us. But you know what? I'd rather be struggling to reach the mountaintop than, be standing on top of the tiny little hill going, I did it in like June. It's just not going to work.
I tend to divide my goal setting into, or at least think about, I mean, it's a bit different now, to be honest, because we are two about it. So we usually talk about what we want to do, and we have a very long to-do list, and then we try to figure out where we're going to start, what's on the top, and then we'll work down the list, right? And we never get to the bottom by the end of the year anyway, but... So it's slightly different now, but if I'm thinking back to before we were doing everything together, then I would divide my goals into 3 different buckets. And maybe I could just run over what those 3 were.
I'm curious. I'm guessing writing, marketing, and something else. What are they?
Pretty close, yeah. Oh. I mean, the bucket number 1 would be what I want to achieve in the author business.
Okay.
So that could be, for example, how many books I would want to put out, or that I want to have X amount of revenue or whatever, something like that, right? But it's like if I'm thinking about my authorship as a business, and then I'm basically setting up business goals for myself on what I want to achieve. And I make them very concrete, like sub goals on how to get there.
Nice.
So that I can track throughout the year, and it's not like it's a yearly goal and then I don't know until 12 months later if I'm on track or not, right? So I try to make it some concrete sub goals to get there. So if it is revenue, then I'll probably have some goals about how much I want to increase the revenue per quarter. If it's writing books, then of course, then I want to say something like in the first half, I want to publish, let's say 2 books, and second half 2 books, for example, something like that. So that's bucket number 1.
Excellent.
And then I also used to have a bucket number 2, which was about how I was going to improve my writing craft.
Oh, I like this one.
Yeah, so that could be stuff like I need to read at least, let's say, 10 nonfiction books on writing craft, for example. Or it could be, I also really like the Brandon Sanderson has on YouTube. You can find, I think if you type in "Write About Dragons" on YouTube, You can find a full university level course Brandon Sanderson has there he's done it for several years, and I think all the years worth of classes are there you could just watch them for free.
Oh my
so
gosh.
I also used to watch all of those many years back now, but I watched all of those as well. So if you want to check that out, just type in Write About Dragons in YouTube and you will find them. So that's another way you can improve your craft. And it could also be, of course, that you just want to write, let's say, 10 short stories, and you have some mentor or something that you're working with and you want to get feedback on. I don't know. But basically, writing craft was my bucket number 2. And then bucket number 3 was about, you basically guessed it before, Autumn. So it's about promotion. How am I going to promote myself? So that could be, for example, if back then I was running a YouTube channel, so I would have some goals for my videos, and both in terms of how many views I wanted, or how many comments I wanted, and stuff like that. Well, in the beginning of this episode as well, I shared some podcast stats, right? So it could also be that you are running a podcast and you're tracking how you're performing there. Or if you are not creating videos or podcast or blog posts or something like that, perhaps you just want to learn how to be the master of Amazon ads or Facebook ads or something like that. So you are going to invest either time or money or both in understanding and learning how to do that. So it could be anything, but the key is that you pick something that you want to improve, and then you work at it until you master it. So that's how I did it.
Oh, I like that. I mean, it definitely makes sense. And I agree. You can't set goals and then put them in save the file and stick it in a drawer and never, get back to it. It's really important that it's somewhere visible. Like I like to put my goals on a sticky note, a digital sticky note that's right on my laptop desktop, so that whenever I'm, closing out programs or going in between things, I see the sticky note that says, this is a goal. This is something you wanted to work on.
Yeah.
And it is I think it really does help you reach further if you really say, hey, I want to do this many books, or I want to accomplish this. It really does keep it center that this is my goal and I've got to keep working towards it.
Yeah, I agree. As long as you keep working towards it, exactly. Because I think a lot of the time what happens is that people will set themselves some goals and they'll get distracted about something. They'll start doing something else, and they've sort of, I know I have those goals in the drawer, but I'm not really working against them or to achieve them. So it sort of just fizzles out, right? I think that's one of the things. And the other thing is also that a lot of the times people struggle to just make their goals concrete enough. So it's this sort of fluffy stuff that, you need to be able to track whether you're on track or not. Because if you cannot track it, you have no idea where you're going.
Right.
Of course, if you say I'm going to release 4 books this year, publish 4 books, that's pretty easy to track whether or not you're doing that. But if you have other types of goals, like, for example, I want to, let's say, master Facebook ads, like we talked about just a second ago, right? How do you track that? Well, then that's where you need to break it down in one way or another to say, okay, how do I know when I've mastered it, right? So maybe it's something like I need to have 10 different Facebook ad campaigns that turns a profit or something. I don't know. I'm just making something up here, right? But you need to make it concrete enough that you can actually track whether or not you are achieving what you want to achieve. And then let's say by the end of the year, you only got 7 Facebook campaigns that is turning a profit. Well, I think that's pretty damn good anyway. So you should be happy about that, right?
Yeah. And there's times where you might not even know. You might be such a novice to Facebook ads that you don't even know what is an achievable goal. So you might start off by saying creating a campaign that's really getting a positive return on investment and is like something to be proud of. And then you might have to revise it and tweak it a little bit more as you suddenly realize, oh, this is what it's about as you start taking the training. But
that's a fair point.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time what I see people struggle with is they can say, like, I want to write this many books, but they have a hard time with breaking it down into the milestones, the sub goals that make it achievable, breaking it down into steps that are bite-sized, that maybe are monthly or weekly to make it happen. Because I know, like, one of my big goals a couple years ago now was, like, I wrote down I wanted to finally be a featured author in BookBub. I just I wanted to hit that target. I don't know why, but it was in my head, and that's what I wanted to do. And so, yeah, so I could write that down, but how the frick do you do that? So I broke it down. Like, I wanted to redo my covers. I didn't think they were as strong. I wanted to redo my descriptions. I needed more reviews. You know, you start doing all of these processes. I needed more followers on BookBub. And by breaking it down and say, doing the new covers, I hit my number of reviews I wanted. I redid my formats, made sure that the book itself looked spectacular, and then I submitted off to BookBub, because that's part of your goal. Is like, once you think you have everything in place, you got to make sure you're actually putting it in, and lo and behold, I actually did it. So it's totally achievable if you break down the steps that on the outside, that's just like, you can't do. I want to be a New York Times bestselling author. Well, how do you do that? Look at the steps, see what other people are doing, break it down into actionable items, and then actually do each one and check it off. And yeah, maybe you won't hit that big one, but at least you'll be there, and I bet you'll have learned so much along the way that, you know, you might still hit it yet.
Yeah, I agree. And I would also say, because with what you said before, it sort of made me think a bit. Because I would also say, if you have some goals about how many books you want to write, I mean, if you're working on your first book, just make your goal that to finish that book, because honestly, before you finish the first one, you have no idea how long it's going to take, and it's that first book is also going to take much longer than you think it will. So don't start out by saying, if you have never written a book before, don't start out by saying, I'm going to write 4 books this year. I mean, forget it. Just say, I'm going to finish 1 book, and that's it.
And that first book will also take much longer than probably every other book you will write. I think everyone's first book is a huge learning curve. And
my first one took 1.5 years, and I think nowadays we can probably, if we focus not on, if we don't do all the course building and all the other stuff we have going in autumn, but I think we can turn out a book in 3-4 months.
That's what I was going to say. It's probably 3-4 months. Even when I'm writing, I've written 4.5 books in 1 year before, while still having a full-time job, and it is totally. I was so focused, and good characters. They basically wrote themselves. I could barely keep up. And when you get into that kind of flow, it's fantastic, but you're not always going to be there. And, 4 books in a year with a job and kids and family and life, that's a little tough. So don't be tough on yourself. Do stuff that is going to make you stretch, but not necessarily overwhelm you and make you have a breakdown either.
No, exactly. I think that's important. And I mean, once you know what you're doing, 4 books a year is probably not unrealistic, but you need to know what you're doing, and you need to have the practice from publishing before you can set yourself goals like that. So that was just like a very quick warning, so you don't end up stressing yourself out, because goal setting is good, but if you put really unrealistic goals and you work yourself into the ground because of it, then that's not worth it, right?
No, not at all. You should make this still fun, and there should be, some flexibility and stuff in there as well, that, you have an achievement you want to get to, but, you still need to take family vacation and go to your sister's wedding and all those things too. I would honestly say, as you're doing your goal setting, that, life goals should be up there, and having fun, that should also be one of your buckets you're filling as you're looking at your goals for the year, not just writing and marketing. You got to make sure you balance all of that with some family and fun. And so going over, so we do goals, but I think this is another time of year that is good to do some, like, once a year cleaning a house. That's what I like to do in January.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just about to say, because you told me before we started recording that you have a small list of things, and so do I. So I'm thinking maybe we could just jump back and forth. So you pick one of your list and I pick one of mine, and so forth.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and start. So one of the things I like to do this time of year is going over my manuscripts. And for me, I like to look for missing links, like, did I publish a book and I forgot to add it to a previous book, or did my website change at all? Or even just going through the manuscript and checking all those links are actually working, because, sometimes you publish stuff and there's a kink and you didn't realize it. So I like to go over my manuscripts at least once a year. And even if any readers during the year sent me any updates saying, hey, that word's misspelled and I didn't go fix it right away, now's the time to make sure I get all of those fixed and polished and cleaned.
Yeah, that was also on my list, to be honest. And because also I had the ones about, you published the book 1 and maybe in the back of that book you wrote like book 2 coming in 2019. And it's like, yeah, great. And now we're 2020. So yeah, you need to update those.
Definitely. That's a good point. I even have seen, because I like to do sample chapters for something in the back of my books, and sometimes those don't get updated to the actual polished versions, or maybe I want to link to a different book, and all those little things. It's a good time to think about, even marketing. Like, I've started putting in the back of my books a little social media page, like sort of like hashtags and ways of sharing and stuff. I need to go back and add that to all my other books now. So I guess I'll be doing that this January.
Yeah. Okay, so should I pick one from my list?
Go for it.
Yeah, so I also put in email list here. And what I mean by that is that, so there's a few different things I want to go over here. Checking your, total open rates, your click-through rates, and how many subscribers you're getting and from where they're signing up is pretty good to do here at the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. And of course, your email service provider, whether you're using ConvertKit like us or MailChimp or whatever, will tell you all of these stats. So when you log in, the dashboard will tell you. But it's good to do because if one of the things that you're offering in exchange for email addresses is outperforming another thing that you're doing or offering, then maybe you should double down on that one that actually performs really well and do that more, promote that more here in 2020. And also when it comes to the emails themselves, maybe you need to clean up your list. And what I mean by that is that if you're finding that you have very low open rates and very low click-through rates, it could easily be because you have a lot of death weight on your list. And what I mean by that is that when people are signing up to get something for free, probably something you're offering, it could be like a free chapter, maybe it's a full free novel, or it could be like a character sheet that you're giving away, something you're giving away, maybe in the back end of those books that we just talked about. There could be a link to say, hey, you wanna check out this character, or what he's been up to after the novel ended, or whatever it may be. Maybe you have a short story or something. And then people sign up to get those free things. But some of those people who sign up, and it's probably more people than you think, actually just sign up, get that freebie thing that they were looking for, and then they will never open an email again. And if you have too many of those people on your list, it will hurt your open rates. And if it hurt your open rates, it will actually also hurt your deliverability of the emails. So it's no good, basically. So you need to do a cleanup. I like to actually purge the email list, both my personal one, but also Autumn and my list every quarter. So what I will do is that I will use the ConvertKit. Basically has a way that it keeps track of those who haven't opened an email for, I think it's 90 days. And then we sort those out, and I'll send them an email just to those people and say that we can see that they haven't opened an email. And then I will tell them that if you want to stay on this list, you need to click this link. And if you do not click this link, we will delete you within a week.
You're so cutthroat. There you go.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, as authors, we also have to treat this as a business, and we're paying for the people on the list. And if they have no interest in reading the emails, why should we be paying for having them on the list, right? So that's why we purge them, because we only want people on the list who is actually interested in reading the stuff that we email them. So the ones that, because the way that it ConvertKit in this case, and I think most other email providers work the same way, the way that they track whether or not people opened the email is that they have a transparent 1 pixel size image in the email that they put in, and then they track if that image gets loaded. But in some email programs, they will have disabled image loading by default. So that means that those people might actually open and read the emails, but because the pixel did not get loaded, ConvertKit will think that these people are not opening the emails, even though they are actually opening. So that's why I'm sending that email instead of just deleting people, because then the ones who are actually interested in our emails they will click the link and say, hey, do not delete me. And then of course we won't. But this is a very good way, I think, to keep a healthy email list, and a healthy email list is extremely important. I'll not go into all the details on deliverability and why now, but actually in 2020, Autumn and I are also planning to release a completely free course for authors called Self-Publishing Success. And in that, I'll have a full module on email lists, and I'm going to explain why this is so important. So you can stay tuned for that. But that was a bit on email list. I hope that was not too boring.
No, and well, I was going to even add to it, if you have automations, which a lot of us as authors do, we're not sending out every single email or just doing campaigns. So if you have any like onboarding automations, normally see which ones are performing well, but again, check your links. I'm going to be like, this is just hold up a sign, check your links. Go look at them really quick. Make sure they're as evergreen as you think they are. Make sure that they, double check your spelling. It's just a good time to look at it again with fresh eyes and see if there's anything you can improve, a tone you want to change, new information you want to add. It really is important to keep these up to date. I know I've gotten one before, and there was a reference to something that was like 5 years in the past. And I was like, what? Come on, just go through these every once in a while, people, and make sure that they're still accurate and going to the correct websites and everything like that. That's very important. And actually, speaking of websites, so that's going to be my next one, because I like to do websites. But this is a good time to run through your website, especially go into Chrome in incognito mode. Go in as a random browser and go and see what it looks like. Check your links. But look at the information.
Check it on mobile.
Yeah, check it on mobile. Go and look at your stuff as a new reader, not just with your lens of being the author and what you think it looks like from the back end, but what it really looks like. Go to your spouse's or your kid's computer and go see what it looks like as someone who is not logged into the site, and make sure everything looks good. Get those links shaped up. And again, if you did books, you published anything, if you're not running a blog, or even if you're running a blog, go update it. Just now is the time of year to add that to your to-do list, even if it's a modest amount. Go get it going again and make sure everything's clean. Your images are good, that even if you're in your backend, you've updated your plugins and your WordPress theme or your Wix, whatever you're using, because the older those things get, the closer it is to crashing or being vulnerable to hackers. So make sure you get all your software up to date before someone swipes all your files.
Yeah, this next one of mine actually goes hand in hand with what you just said.
Ooh.
Because other than website, I would also say check your social media profiles. That includes your bio on Amazon or Goodreads or anywhere else where you might have written a bio. So just check if anything is outdated, or maybe you just need to do a general update. Maybe you can write a better bio. Or how about the banners that you're using on Facebook or on your Twitter profiles and so on? Do you need to change any of them, or do you need to update some of it? It's just a good best practice to get done here at the beginning of the year.
Get a fresh face for the new year.
That could be misunderstood.
That's true. But no, that's a really good point. Those are things that people tend to forget. Just like when I think of like updating your website or updating your manuscripts, you have to also go update the places like BookFunnel and Story Origins, places where you have your book files uploaded to. So that's another thing, is sometimes it's easy to make sure you uploaded something and updated something on Amazon. But some of those places where your readers go, like BookFunnel or your beta readers, they have access to some of your other stuff. Make sure that those are updated too.
I have one more thing on my list. How is your list looking?
I think I'm pretty well wrapped up, actually.
Okay. I have one more, and it's about saving money. So this is probably pretty important.
I want to hear this.
It sounds important, doesn't it?
I like this one already.
Yeah, so I would say review your last year's invoices that you received and paid, and just check if you have any ongoing subscriptions for some services that you aren't actually using anymore.
That's a good tip.
Because you might as well just go ahead and cancel them if you're not using them and save yourself some money. But it actually happens more often than you think, that you have something on automatic payment for some subscription for something, and you're not even thinking about it. Maybe it's just like $10 a month, so you don't really notice it. But they just subtract $10 a month, and it's just a waste of money, right?
That's true.
So just go and check that, and it's good.
Yeah.
Good idea.
I think that's a very good idea. And sometimes it's really important to check at least a couple full months, because I know my husband and I were both subscribed to something, and we thought it was one subscription, but there was one slight difference in the email, and we were getting double charged. So places are sneaky. They gave us a refund, thank goodness. But
okay, I was just about to ask, did they do that on purpose?
No, they were very honest about it. They were very nice about it. But yeah, you gotta watch sometimes. You know, you get a family and family accounts, little things like that can happen and creep up and cost you what seems like not much, but boy, $10 even a month adds up really quick by the end of the year, $120.
Yeah, I had even worse. This is probably like a year ago or something. All of it, I was in my net banking, just checking my account status, and then I was thinking, like, this just seems to be missing some money in these accounts. I don't understand why, and what is going on. And then I started going through all of it, and then I saw that we were missing like $3,500 on an account. It's like, what? And it was less, and it was, and then I clicked into the details of it, and I could see there was some sort of, building, what is it called? Like, these big stores where you can buy building materials.
Okay.
In the UK.
What?
So it's so I was like, what? So of course I called the bank and I said, well, this is a mistake. I mean, first of all, I do not live in the UK, and I do not buy building materials in the UK.
You're not secretly building a house there.
Yeah. So they said, just there is like a function inside the net banking where you can click that this is not that this is not me spending these money and whatnot. So he said, just click that and send it in. We'll have a look at it. But I was quite nervous because it was a lot of money. So I asked him, but does it make a difference what I put in? Do I need to write something special to make sure you get the money back? But of course, he didn't want to say that. He just said, no, you just write honestly, and then we'll look at it. Because of course, he didn't want to tell me what to write. So I submitted it, and I was a bit nervous. But like 2-3 days later, the bank returned the money. So that was good. But it was a bit scary. It was quite a lot of money.
That is a lot of money, and it's easy to have happen to either stuff goes into the wrong account. Those numbers all mean stuff, or someone swipes your card. So it
must have been something like, I have no idea when it's happened. I mean, I did travel to London on a frequent basis at the time, but I have no idea when somebody must have done something. But anyway, that's history now. But so I think, as you can hear, people, there's a lot of things you can do at the beginning of the year to set yourself up for success, and hopefully. We mentioned some stuff in this episode that maybe you hadn't thought about yourself. At least that was the aim, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And if you haven't, let us know in the comments if there's anything else you hadn't heard of before, or anything else you think would be a good tip for folks. All right, so next Monday, we're going to give you 6 different streams of income for authors. It might serve well as yet more inspiration on how you can diversify your income.
If you like what you just heard, there's a few things you can do to support the AmWritingFantasy podcast. Please tell a fellow author about the show and visit us at Apple Podcast and leave a rating and review. You can also join Autumn and Jesper on patreon.com/AmWritingFantasy. For as little as $1 a month, you'll get awesome rewards and keep the AmWritingFantasy podcast going. Stay safe out there, and see you next Monday.